All right, so for part 2 of our video this week, I believe we'll have 3 parts, um, is going to be basically about being able to critique an artwork and how you use and analyze all of the things that we know. So I have a couple artworks that I want to talk to you about, but the first thing I want to go over is some key terms that might really help you in explaining what you're talking about in your work of art. And those are the elements of art, which I believe we have no, we have not gone over, I don't think. And the elements of art are line, which there are many different types of line. They can be thin and thick, horizontal, vertical, diagonal, straight, curved. Lines can also be broken up and create images as well. Then we have shape, which is a closed line. So to create any type of shape, you are going to use a line and then you will close it. So to make a circle or a square or something called organic or free form, which are shapes that are very natural. So if you think of a cloud or a puddle or even a leaf, those shapes are free forms and they're natural. They're of nature, but they can still be sometimes a recognizable shape. Then we have form, which is a three-dimensional shape using length, width, and depth. So if you think of a sphere or a ball, a lot of times that is created just from a circle, but depending on how you shade that circle, you may turn it into something that looks three-dimensional. Along with boxes, which come from squares, and pyramids, which come from triangles. So a lot of times you're able to add a few more lines, make it three-dimensional, and then shade it to make that also look three-dimensional. Then we have space, which is the area between objects. It can be positive space, which would be your image itself or your sculpture, and negative space, which is the area around it or voids within it. You can also create depth or illusion with space by creating a foreground, middle ground, and background and having things show depth. An example would be, let's say you have a large tree in a picture really close to you, and then off into the distance there is a small tree. That is showing depth. Then we have color, which is light reflected off objects. White is a pure light. Black is the absence of light. Then we have our primary colors, which are the only true colors, which are blue, red, yellow. Secondary, which is when you mix two primary together, green, orange, and violet. And intermediate or tertiary, which is when you mix a primary and secondary together. So you would have yellow, green, blue, violet, red, violet, yellow, orange, and red, orange. And then another thing they're talking about here is complementary colors. Those are colors that go directly across from each other on the color wheel. Like if we think of the Vikings, red, no, not red, purple, yellow. Or if we think of like colors around holiday seasons, like Christmas, which a lot of times is green and red. People will pick colors that complement each other, sometimes making them stand out with each other. And then texture, which is how something would feel. You can either actually have texture on a drawing or you can manipulate it so that it looks like it has texture. So when we're doing art talks or art critiques, it's important to be able to have this background knowledge so that you're able to talk about the work of art using these terms versus just saying if you like it or not and why. So those are the elements of art. And then we have the principles of design, which are balance, which is where you are creating a drawing that feels balanced. You're using the entire composition to create something that moves your eye throughout and it feels balanced. There's also something called symmetrical balance, where it's the same on both sides, and asymmetrical balance, where it is not exactly the same on both sides, but the way it's either shaded, colored, the images used still give you the feeling of it being balanced. Then we have emphasis, which is something that you do to create attention. You are going to emphasize one part of the painting and make it stand out. Movement, you're taking your focal point and creating an image that makes our eye move throughout the entire page. Pattern is repeating objects or symbols. Repetition works with pattern. Sometimes you may use an element of design to create repetition. Proportion is when you are creating something that relates to another thing and you're putting it in proportion. You're making it look life size. So you may have a person, and if they were holding a pop can and you wanted it to look realistic, that pop can would obviously have to be smaller than the image itself, otherwise you'd be out of proportion. Then we have rhythm, which creates a feeling or a mood. Variety uses several different elements to create the composition itself, and then unity, the feeling of harmony between all of the parts that you have created. So what we'll do next is we will talk about, in a minute, I'd like to talk about do an art talk or an art critique, but I want to go through the critical process of it, and I can't remember exactly. Okay, so here's the critical process of when you're analyzing artwork and the things that you want to think about or know prior to evaluating it, basically. You need to know the general information, because a lot of times, you'll be able to go into a museum, and if you can actually talk about a work of art in reference to the things that you've learned in this course, you're going to have a lot more background knowledge and a more successful process of analyzing it versus I like it, it's cool, or I hate it. Because a lot of people have a lot of different taste levels, and you may not like something, but you can still analyze it correctly. So the things that are important to know is your general information: title, artist, date, location, and possibly even current location of that artwork. Then you'd go to iconography, which is your subject matter. What is the image about? What is the composition about? What are they trying to tell us in this picture? What does it mean? Then our medium, which is what you are using to create that work of art. Is it a sculpture made of wood? Is it a sculpture made of clay? Is it a painting made of fabric and oil paint? You're going to want to know what the medium is. Then we have form, which is talking about the line, color, and over the principle and elements. That would be your form. And then your context. What was going on during the time in the world when the artist created this work of art? What was happening in the region? Did that change why they made the artwork? Or did it, sway them in a direction to go for their artwork? Is that what their work is about? Totally. And then you'll just talk about other information that maybe you know about the art. So in the podcast 3, we will actually do a short discussion on analyzing art through looking at a couple different paintings.